What if the reason you're unhappy is just bad math?
You're about to hear our life-changing conversation with Gawdat, former chief business officer at Google.
After the tragic loss of his son, he turned his engineer's mind towards solving life's biggest problem: how to be happy no matter what.
In this episode, Mo reveals why your brain is wired against happiness,
The simple equation that unlocks it,
and how to reprogram your mind to feel lasting joy no matter what life throws your way.
So Mo, what qualifies you, the former chief business officer of Google X, and a dude who has spent 30 years of his career in tech, to write about happiness?
Nothing whatsoever, other than
We're losing people, Mo. We're losing people.
No, it's the truth. I mean, other than living in misery for a very long time, which I think is actually normally the case for those who adopt an approach to happiness. I'm the luckiest human being you'll ever meet. I'll just tell you this hands down. I was born and raised in Egypt, public school, public university in Egypt. So understand that I shouldn't have gone as far as I went in life, honestly, at all. I mean, it's a blessing beyond payback, right? But when you really think about it, I was very blessed at a very young age, 29 years old. I had everything that everyone works a lifetime for. And I was miserable. I was miserable to the point where I started to cause a lot of pain to my family, made my wonderful daughter, I remember vividly, one day, on a Saturday morning, she's very excited. She wants to spend time with me. And I broke her heart. Literally, I was reading an email and I looked at her and I said, "Can we please be serious for a minute?" To a 5-year-old. I mean, think about that, right? And I could see her heart break. I could see it as she started to cry, and I decided I don't want to be that man anymore. And I'll be very honest, being a mathematician at heart, physicist, someone who is very left-brained by training through my career. I struggled. It took me several years to figure anything out at all. Like, I read every book, watched every documentary, went to every teacher, went to every spiritual gathering, did everything that you can think of, and completely failed to even get the meaning of the word of, being happy. And I will tell you openly, miserable times until I think I had one very first breakthrough that led me to, into an upward spiral of figuring things out with my left brain, then going to my wonderful son and daughter. Ali Habibi, my son, was pure wisdom, and my daughter is life itself. And so between them, I'd start to get glimpses of what weird brains, think of as said through the heart of a child. And somehow, by mixing those two together, I ended up really one of the happiest people you'll ever meet. I still am, I believe, today. In a very unusual way, because I am not a monk, even though I tried for a couple of times in my life. I'm not living in a monastery somewhere. I'm not, a practitioner or a teacher or a healer or all of those, maybe more qualified people. As a matter of fact, I'm very much, an everyday warrior. I go to, I work, I review businesses, and I speak a language, I think, that really made what I'm providing a little different. I speak the language of logic and process and mathematics and things that I think more and more of us have learned on the, in the workplace and in universities and so on. And so I sort of offered my understanding of happiness in a way that makes people understand it in the modern world. And that registered somehow.
Wow. So you took your engineering brain and you came up with this equation. Can you tell us about this equation?
Yeah, it's, I know, it sounds really funny. Look, I was sitting in Seattle, sipping coffee, the days before the iPhone, because I had CDs with me. And one of the CDs was a band called Supertramp. And I know you don't know Supertramp. I know you don't, right? And any one of your audiences who knows, any one of your audiences who knows Supertramp is probably too old. Anyway, the band had a song called The Logical Song, right? And the Logical Song starts with something, I don't quote me on the lyrics, but it says, when I was young, it seemed that life was so wonderful. All the birds on the trees were singing so happily. Basically our typical, unless of course you're in an abusive home, every child is happy somehow, right? And then in a very beautiful way, the song switches to, and then they sent me away to teach me how to be logical, responsible, practical, cynical, clinical, rational, basically. And I literally paused my Discman and said, oh my God, that's the story of my life. This is really it, right? You're born happy. It's almost like your hardware and software are working perfectly. And then somehow they send you to school, and then they send you to work, and then they send you, right? And you suddenly are taught a different setup. And that different setup, if excuse my English, with your software, right? And so, in a very unusual way, that was my wake-up call. Okay, I paused the Discman. I canceled my work day, right? Called in sick, wasn't, and I literally started to think about what happened. When did it break? Right? When was the moment? I was happy when I was 16. I was happy when I was 12. I was happy when I was 4. I was happy when I was 0. Right? When did it break? And it hit me so hard that for a software developer, an engineer, a geek like myself, that perhaps if I could reverse engineer happiness, I could develop an algorithm that I can program. I'll explain to you what that means. I told myself, look, there are moments in my life where I felt happy. If I can take, count of all of those moments and draw them on a chart, right? Then approximating that chart would be the equation that describes happiness, and everything outside that chart is unhappiness, solved, right? And basically I said to myself, if I can then put that in a computer code that would automatically generate all of those moments on that curve, then I can, generate them on demand and be happy all the time. Weird, I know. I'm sorry. I realize that now, okay? But believe it or not, it worked then, right? And it worked in a very interesting way, because suddenly you realize that once you look for the moments in your life where you felt happy, right, you realize that there was only one thing common between all of them. Only one, believe it or not, which is not what the event was. It was not what your circumstances were. It was not, how your body felt. It wasn't any of that. It was a very simple comparison between what the event was and how you wanted the event to be, right? If if it's, take anything in your life, rain has no inherent value of happiness or unhappiness in it. If you're a farmer and you want to water your plants, rain is amazing. If your ex-girlfriend's getting married and, you want to spoil the wedding, rain is amazing. If you're, and seriously, and if you want to sunbathe, rain, completely pisses you off. Okay. And so basically, rain doesn't make you happy or unhappy. Nothing actually makes you happy or unhappy. It's a comparison between the thing and how you want life to be. And so you can summarize that in an equation, right? Happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between the events of your life and your expectations of how life should be. Now, once you get that, I kid you not, it changed everything. Why? Because in reality, at that time of my life, I had everything. I had all the happiness, all the reasons why, people will say, when I get this, I'll be happy. I had it. Or, I had a wonderful wife. I had 2 wonderful kids. I had a beautiful home with a swimming pool. I had, beautiful cars. I had all the money to travel. I had. But the problem is my brain didn't think that this was right. Being stuck in traffic was like, oh, that's not right. As if life has given me a service level agreement that basically says, now that I have everything, I shouldn't be stuck in traffic, right? And somehow being stuck in traffic misses my expectations, and so I end up feeling unhappy. My daughter comes and interrupts my email. I end up feeling unhappy. My, wonderful wife, now ex, but, at the time, my wonderful wife would be, tired one day or emotional one day. And I'm like, come on, I don't have time for this shit. Right. And when you really start to see it that way, it hits you very hard that happiness is events minus expectations. And believe it or not, that means happiness is a choice, because your perception of the events, maybe not the events themselves, but your perception of the events is your choice. And the way you set realistic expectations is your choice. And so 90% of the time, the reason we're unhappy is because either we don't see the event for what it is, or we set expectations that are unrealistic.
Wow. That was just unbelievably said. And the way that your brain works is very different than ours, but it's so amazing to see it at work.
I apologize.
No, it's truly incredible, because the people listening to our show are high achievers, and to hear someone as intelligent as you with a brain that works the way that yours does, to have such a basically first principles approach to happiness is something that is really nice, because, we hear a lot of lofty things about happiness, but I love how pragmatic and practical yours is. But I want to talk about the two sides of this equation, not the two sides, but the two elements on the one side of the equation, which we have events and expectations, right? I want to talk first about the perception of events. And I would love for you to talk about, if you're comfortable with it, the really painful event in your life that pushed your perception of events to the ultimate limit.
Wow. Allow me to explain what I mean perception of events first, and then we go to Ali's story. I used the example of being stuck in traffic, right? Being stuck in traffic is an event that, you're helpless, you're delayed, you may want to go pee or whatever. It might be uncomfortable, and it's not a pleasant experience, right? And so your brain has the ability to say, this is not how I want life to be, correct? But it's really your choice to set that as your perception of the event, or you can choose to say, well, I am in a car. Interesting. I have somewhere to go. I have the money to put, fuel in the car. I have someone waiting for me. The car is air conditioned. I am not in a war zone where some tyrant somewhere is dropping bombs on our heads all the time. I'm not starving to death. I am. And you can really look at the perception of that event. I haven't invented anything here, by the way. I didn't make up stories. These are all realities for anyone stuck in traffic listening to us right now, right? And
Right.
and it's just that we, because our brains are survival machines. They don't care about all that's going right. They want to zoom in and focus on what's wrong, because what's wrong is important for survival. Right? If if you're out in the jungle in the caveman and women years, you don't just take the jungle in and go like, oh, look at all of that beauty. Any little sound makes you think it's a tiger, and so every little sound, even though it's just a lovely breeze, is a threat to you. Right? Now, because of that, we tend to reframe we tend to narrow down every event to only its negative perception. And there's tons of scientific research that will show you that 70% of the thoughts in an adult brain are negative. So if you just go to one of your friends at random and say, tell me something that happened in the last couple of days, they'll tell you a negative thing, not a positive thing, 70% of the time. Now, if you're able to look at the event for what it is, then your perception completely changes. And by reframing the event, you might find happiness in the same event that could have made you miserable. One great example that I get is, when someone texts me, I get thousands, luckily I get thousands of messages every day from people who have heard of my work. And, when someone texts me and says, I'm so heartbroken, I'm going through a very difficult breakup, how can I find happiness when the event is so harmful, so hurtful, and so on? And my typical answer is, congratulations, I'm very happy for you. If you're breaking up, that means it wasn't working out, and it's about time that you go out and enjoy life instead of arguing with your partner, right? And in a very interesting way, I'm not inventing things here. That's actually the truth. You just have to restate the event. Now, you asked me about the event that completely defined my life, I have to say. So I told you I found my happiness model not because of my left brain, but because of my left brain as filtered through the wisdom and the life that my son and my daughter brought to our world. And I never expected that, being a manly man with a deep voice and a bald head and a beard and, hair on my chest and all of the stuff that we Middle Eastern men do, right? I never expected to be that soft, but I have absolutely felt enormous love, still feel enormous love for my kids, right? And I basically learned so much from them that they became not only my biggest gift ever, but also my biggest teachers. When you really think about it, I think my kids are very special, but everybody thinks that way. But I think kids in general, because of their ability to stay in purity, remind us of what it actually is like to be human. And so there is so much to learn from them. If you see them as a gift, not as a burden or a curse or whatever, a hard work or whatever. Anyway, so they defined my life in that way, and they earned my love as a result of that. And by the time it was 2014, I was chief business officer of Google X. Loads of money, second best job on the planet, regarded very highly in the tech world, and so on and so on and so on. And I can guarantee you, if, Gawdat decided to take all of that away, I wouldn't have even blinked, right? But instead, my wonderful Ali, my son, calls us. He was a bass guitarist in a very good band, and they were about to tour the US to open for a famous band. And then he calls us in May and says, I feel compelled to come and see you guys, right? Interesting choice of words. So I said, of course, Habibi, come. Bought him the ticket. Aya, my daughter, was here. We said it's going to be an amazing, vacation for all of us. And 4 days later, he gets belly pain. We take him to a hospital. He's diagnosed with an appendix inflammation, which, requires a surgery, but the simplest surgery known to humankind, really. Normally a 5-minute surgery. Anyway, in our case, the surgeon did 5 mistakes in a row, one after the other, corrected all of them wrong, some of them late. And 4 hours later, we lost Ali. And it never goes away. So Ali left us more than 10 years ago now. But I can tell you something, in the very design of being a father never heals. You never really figure out why or how, or it just it doesn't feel normal. It feels like a small part of your heart is missing, basically. So if I had chosen at the time to just shut down and put my head down and cry for the rest of my life, honestly, if you had hugged Ali once, nobody would have ever blamed me, honestly. But I had the weirdest response ever. I was very calm. I was extreme. The 5 stages of grief is, they end in acceptance. I started from acceptance. it really, really twisted my brain, because at the time, being chief business officer of such a big business, and you sort of believe that you are paid to solve every problem that is presented to you. Then suddenly you're presented with this problem. So at the beginning, your brain goes like, I'm going to solve this one. I'm going to find a way, right? And then you realize that nobody's come back from death. So, this is futile, basically. And somehow, I know your question was perception. How can you perceive such an event with calm and peace like I did? And I have to say, it's a very long story, but it can be summarized in your definition of if death is good or bad. And this is difficult. From one side, I'm a spiritual person. I could probably say I'm a religious person, even though I don't have a specific religion. I follow all religions, if you want, which perhaps makes me follow none. I don't know. But I find that from my understanding of physics to start, which was very early in my life, that life does not end with death. That death is not the opposite of life, it's the opposite of birth. And what that means is that there is a portal somewhere or somewhen where you come into this physical form of ours, almost like switching on a game console, and then the avatar shows on the screen, and that portal is called birth. And then there is another portal through which you leave this physical form, as if you switched off the console or put your controller down, and that portal is called death. But life continues before, during, and after. And a lot of people think that I'm the bravest person ever to withstand losing my child. No, I am almost convinced that my child had a better journey leaving, right? Almost exactly like when he was, so before he came to visit us, he was studying in Boston in Northeastern University. And, we're men, so we texted once a week and, spoke on the phone for 3.5 minutes, maybe every other week. Hey, Papa, you're okay? Yes, boy, I'm okay. Are you well? And that's all I needed. I needed to know he was well, he was happy. Yeah, he was far away. I didn't get to see him. And, we were not always in touch, but he was okay. He was good. That's all a dad wants to know. And now I think of where Ali is and I go like, okay, he's a little further away than Boston, and he is there for a little longer, and we're not texting every week, but he's good. And so somehow my perception is, while I have absolutely no guarantee that I will live another minute, I have 100% guarantee that sooner or later I'll be where he is. And so to me, that was a very, very strong reason why I was okay. I wasn't happy, and I still am in pain. I'll tell you that openly. But the pain is different than the suffering. The pain is, I miss him. I want to hug my child, right? But the suffering is to keep telling myself things like, you should have driven him to another hospital, or how can you let that happen, or what's wrong with you as a father, or, you're never going to see him again, or life is against us and it took my son from me, or God doesn't like me, or, you can tell yourself 1.5 million stories. None of them is true. The truth is, we all leave one day, and one of us will feel the pain of losing the other. It happened this way this time, and sooner or later I'll hug him again.
That is an extremely powerful story. And I'm a big believer in when someone passes, after they pass, if you continue to say their name and speak about them, it kind of brings them back into this life. And I'm so happy that you still are using his name when you speak in these conversations, and you're writing this book, and he's still so much a part of your life. And I feel like it's now become a part of his legacy, everything that you're creating. So he is still almost alive and well in this world and still impacting the world, even though he's physically not here with us. So I think that's a beautiful thing.
You'll be amazed, Nick. You'll be amazed. And I never expected that, because when I started to write, I started to write because my daughter came to me around 4 days after he left. And she said he had a dream that he was everywhere and part of everyone. And of course, when you look at it, a few years later, everywhere and part of everyone basically is the soul being liberated from the ties of the physical world. So you can be everywhere, right? And lots of spiritual teachings teach that. But at the time, I looked at it and I said, I was chief business officer of Google, and I had before that started half of Google's businesses globally, and and somehow I heard it as a quota. I heard him giving me a target. Okay. And it's so weird. I know it's so weird, but I remember I sat down and I said, okay, Habibi, consider it done. I'll make that happen. Right. And in a very interesting way, when I started to write Solve for Happy, my first book, 17 days after Ali left. And I did that with the objective of, if I could distill his essence of what he taught me in that book, and enough people read it and then share some of it with each other, then, through 6 degrees of separation, in 70 years, my calculation was that he would be everywhere and part of everyone. His essence would be everywhere and part of everyone. And my God, you have no idea. It's literally like the universe took this seriously. Ali's everywhere. He's everywhere. And every morning I get like 5-10 messages when I wake up in the morning. We love Ali. Thank you, Ali. This is, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And you have to admit, we never really go anywhere. And leaving a legacy in this world might not be the biggest achievement, if you ask me, because this world is a blip in our life. But at the end of the day, for him to be making such a big impact, even after he left, speaks loads about the kind of character that he was. The person that really wanted to help people, that really wanted to make people happy, and he's now doing it through me. Clever video gamer, that one.
Yeah. Well, we want to say that Ali is also a part of us now. So we want to say thank you to you and Ali, because he will be walking with us everywhere we go. And we just want to say thank you, man. And
I also want to say it's extremely impressive the way that you were able to separate from your brain and watch those thoughts. Because when I put myself in your perspective, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one that listens to that story and thinks like, I want to actually go and murder that doctor. Like that's my like visceral caveman.
Come on, Mike. No, hold on. That's a very good point. I'll tell you why. Because again, reframing is very important, right? Which doctor wakes up in the morning and goes like, okay, today is the day I'm going to kill a patient and end my career? Nobody does that, right? Your brain will tell you that. My brain also told me, how could you let this guy that killed him operate on him? I mean, the guy did the same surgery 440 times before. I checked, right? But then the trick here is to understand that surgeon, when he came out to us and say there were complications in the operation, and he rushed back in and he stayed in there for like 6 hours until midnight or whatever, I know for a fact he was trying his best. But you know what? I'm an author. When I make a mistake, it's a typo in my book. When a surgeon makes a mistake, he loses a patient.
Of course, that is an extreme form of empathy. And I think hopefully if it inspires people to just be a little bit more empathetic in everyday life, that's a beautiful thing.
I would wish so. Yeah.
Another thing that really impacted me from reading your book and just researching you on all these podcasts is that you call your brain Becky. I absolutely, could you explain why you call your brain Becky?
So I believe that 90%, I mean, if I would give you one shortcut to take away 90% of your happiness, it would be to debate your brain, right? And the idea is, as I said, your brain is a is a survival machine. It's attempting to keep you safe, so it's giving you only the negative side of everything, right? And that's a problem, because when we hear that voice in our heads, we think of it as me talking to me, right? And if it's me talking to me, then it must be right. Like I'm so smart, right? And the whole idea is that's actually not true. And the West glorifies thought so much that we say, I think, therefore I am. Like I'm defined by thought, okay? But the East, the older spiritual traditions, they actually see the brain as a separate entity, or the mind, if you want, as a separate entity. And that's actually really clear, because if it was you talking to you, why would you need to talk? I mean, think about that, huh? If it was you talking to you, you would instinctively know what you want to say, so no need for talking, okay? The reason why there is a voice in your head is because it's a biological function. And so somehow you start to see that your kidney's biological function is to take poisons out of your body. Your heart's biological function is to pump blood around your veins. And nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I pump blood, therefore I am, right? And so that idea of no, my brain's biological function is to make sense of the world around me and represent that in the building blocks of knowledge, which are words, right? Then I think therefore I am is simply, it sounds to me just like I pee, therefore I am. Okay. And that's not true. Okay. And so when you start to see it that way, you start to see that it's actually really powerful to treat your brain as a third party, so that you don't have to always obey, that you can actually ask for evidence and proof. You can simply, I mean, I have friends of mine, one of my friends actually told me once that she takes appointments with her brain. So she wakes up in the morning, and you know how it is, and she's very emotional today, and then she basically, has to go to work. So she tells her brain, okay, you know what? I know this matters. I know my boyfriend's an asshole, but we're going to talk about that at 6. Is that okay? And her brain literally goes like, yeah, 6 is fine, as long as 6:01, right? But here's the thing. So I was telling all of that to one of my dear friends, as came to me the next week. We were having coffee, and she said something really stupid, to be honest. And so I was like, what is that? And she said, oh, I'm really sorry. Becky told me. I was like, Becky who? And she said, Becky, my brain. Right. And I said, Becky, why is your brain Becky? Now she's taking the idea of the third party brain all the way. And she said, because Becky was the most annoying kid in school. Okay. And she was the one that, she was the one that always came to me and told me things that made me feel bad about myself without offering any solutions. So from now on, my brain is Becky. And I took that to heart. And I talk to Becky out loud occasionally, like a madman. I'm not ashamed to do it. And and I ask, I believe it or not, I ask Becky, like I ask a third party, to provide evidence for what it says. Okay. And that's a freaking game changer. I cannot tell you how much of a game changer that is.
Is that related to the 3 levels of happiness?
Well, I mean, I'd rather talk about, the idea of us finding happiness and suffering as almost the human condition, if you want. The brain and other things. I mean, remember, my entire work is a full model that I call the 6-7-5. 6 grand truths and 7 blind spots and sorry, 7 blind spots and 5 ultimate truths. And it's a lot more complicated than that. But when it comes to our levels of happiness and joy, when it comes to our levels of suffering, these are human states, if you want. And I think the most important differentiator for them is to say that happiness, as per the happiness equation, is not a state of fun. It's not what you feel when you go to a party and jump up and down and have a couple of drinks. That's not happiness. That's dopamine. And dopamine is an excitatory, this is a feeling of reward or excitement. Okay, happiness, as per the happiness equation, is events equal to or better than expectations, which is a state of calm and peaceful contentment where you look at life and you say, I don't mind if it stays that way. I'm okay with life as it is. Right now, that state is quite interesting. Huh? That state is a state where you're the opposite of dopamine. What you have in your blood is serotonin, and serotonin is a calmer. So dopamine is an excitatory. It wants you to do more of what makes you feel good, right? Serotonin is more of a calmer. It basically says, I've checked the world around me. I'm okay with it. Now let's rest and digest. Right? Let's, close our eyes and reflect. Let's replenish our muscles. Let's do all of those other vital biological functions that are needed for survival that we ignore when we're in our constant state of stress. Now, when you see those two differently, you'd realize that this state of happiness, okay, and calm and peace is a state of lasting okayness with life. Okay, when the state of excitement and fun, as I call it, is a painkiller. Really, when you really think about it, it's life is not exciting enough, so let me just shoot something, in my blood and feel good for 10 minutes. And the problem with the dopamine is that you get that injection of dopamine in your blood, and the minute you do that, your brain receptors for dopamine downregulate. Okay, so let's say you go to a party and you get 100 units of dopamine in your blood. Your brain goes like, okay, the normal now is 100 units. Next time you want me to be excited, give me 110. Right? And so next time you go to a party and you do something wild, it goes like, great, then wilder party, wilder party, wilder party. You go from running on the treadmill to jumping out of an aeroplane. And I think the idea here is that when you have dopamine in your blood, by definition, it pushes serotonin away because it's an excitatory versus the calm and peace that dopamine, that serotonin is supposed to bring. And so the more you get used to finding your state of excitement and happiness through dopamine, the less capable of you are to find calm and peaceful contentment, which is happiness. Right. And so basically what I ask people to do is, yes, of course, have fun. I have more fun than all of you combined, but I have it after I've achieved my state of calm. Right. So basically the idea is to first find out what's making you unhappy, work on it, find your state of calm and peaceful contentment, and then supplement that with fun so that your life is even better. Rather than run away from your troubles through a painkiller, and then when the effects wear down, you ask for more. You asked me about the different states. So of course, on top of the state of happiness, there is a state of joy, what I normally refer to as uninterrupted happiness. This is what the state that the sages achieve, or those who are realistic achieve, when they actually recognize that most of life is okay. Right? So you don't even need to solve the happiness equation in your head anymore. You, by definition, know that life most of the time meets realistic expectations. Even sickness is a realistic expectation. Loss of a loved one is a realistic expectation. A heartbreak is a realistic expectation. And when you get there, you get to that state of stoic joy, if you want, where you're almost always okay. Then, of course, on the opposite side of that state of happiness is the state of suffering. And the state of suffering is when life is okay, but Becky produces thoughts that contribute to your perception or expectation in a way that leads you to feel unhappy.
So I want to talk about expectations for a second. And I think you'll like this. I know you love studying AI now, and we're constantly trying to figure out how do we bring AI into our workflow. So I had AI crawl every video podcast that you were on and asked it to analyze the comment section for recurring questions that people had after they listened to you. And one of the questions that kept coming up about expectations, and I think it relates really well to our audience who are very high achievers, is if I lower my expectations, won't I lose motivation to achieve?
Yeah.
And what do you have to say about that?
I should have done that deep search myself. So I'm very impressed that you did. I didn't, and I will borrow it from you. So please send me the link. This is the best question ever because in reality, I mean, in a way, we have to answer it at two levels. One level is why are you an achiever? Honestly, I mean, look. We get told a story that if you work really hard and put all of the effort in the world and make a lot of money and buy a lot of things, you're going to eventually be happy. Good luck with that, right? The truth is, most of the time, if you're happy, you're going to work very little, not little, but you're going to work something that you enjoy. And it will feel like you're not working at all. And then you'll be very successful at it. I promise you, if you tie me to a chair for 6 weeks, the one thing I will crave the most is to write. That's what I love. And so, no wonder I have 5 bestsellers, because I wrote 17, by the way. I've published 5, but I don't even care if they sell or not. Okay, I just love writing so much that it doesn't count as a work or an achievement anymore, by the way, right? So the first question I ask people is, why are you so blinded by achievement? It's such a big lie, a capitalist lie that never delivers any of the things that you actually want, which are happiness, happiness for those that you love, and love. These are truly the only 3 things that humans want. And having said that, let's go to the core of the question. When I started, after Ali's dream, and I wrote Solve for Happy, and I wanted to get, at the time, my mission was 10 million happy. I wanted to get to 10 million people, and 10 million people, as I said, through 6 degrees of separation, 72 years, would reach everyone on Earth, right? Then 6 to 8 weeks after Ali left, 6 weeks in, I had the TV interview with a channel called Channel 4 in London, in the UK, and that went super viral, 187 million views in the first 2 weeks. Right, and of course, all of the other content started to be viewed, and so on. And so clearly, we had reached more than 10 million people. And we don't measure the mission with who we reached with video views, because if that was the case, I think I get like several million every month today in Instagram or whatever. We measure people who take an action. So they either invest in their own happiness. So they receive a message, they go watch another training, or they go, read a book, or they go whatever, or contribute. So basically make another person happy. So they comment, or they forward the video, or they share, or whatever. So anyway, within 8 weeks, my team sat around me. We're a tiny team, 4 people. And they said, you're a sandbagger. This is, you were lying to us. This was a very easy target. Let's have a bigger target. And the bigger target became 1 billion happy. And 1 billion happy is quite sizable. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. But here's the thing, to answer your question. If my expectation from life that I'm going to reach 1 billion people before I die, I'm bound to be miserable. I'll tell you that, hands down. Okay? If my ambition is to achieve that, whether when I'm alive or after I leave, that's very different, because an ambition is a directional vector that says, this is where I'm heading. As hard as I can, I will get there. I'll do the absolute best I can do every day in that direction. Some days I reach 2 million people on a podcast. Other days I reach 1 person. And other days I don't reach anyone at all. Maybe upset 3 people. Or 300 people, or whatever, right? And when you see it that way, suddenly the ambition becomes 1 billion happy, and that you should stretch as far as you can. So your ambition should be something meaningful, okay? Hopefully it's not going to be a dollar number, and it should drive every one of your actions and your direction and your focus. Your expectation, however, I have boiled that down to one simple expectation across all facets of my life. If I do the best that I can, I will go as far as I can. As simple as that. Okay? If so I speak quite significantly about AI and the future of AI and so on. And to be able to do that, I have to spend 4 to 6 hours a day keeping up with what's happening. right? Every day I can manage to spend those 4 hours, and I learn enough and I take enough notes. I feel that I did my job. Every time I show up on a podcast and I speak about what I believe from my heart with humbleness, that I don't know everything, because the future is very dynamic, and every time people would comment back and say, well, we agree with this, we don't agree with that, but nobody really thrashes me because they know I'm not claiming to be a know-it-all or whatever. I feel that I have achieved my expectation for that day. And my expectation is I woke up, I used every minute that I had in the direction of the ambition to achieve as much as I can. Now, this to me is what most business people, high achievers, miss. Okay. First, they miss why they're doing what they're doing. Okay. And second, they miss that it actually is irrelevant how harsh your objective is, because if you do the best that you can, you're going to achieve more or less than the objective, but you're going to achieve the maximum you can. And the maximum you can is better than the objective, right? I think the mix between those two basically set your ambitions high and big and, really stretching, and set your expectations realistically. You will go far in life, but you will not make yourself miserable by setting unrealistic expectations.
That is super practical, and I love that. And I love how much practicality you put into the book. And one of the other things that I loved you challenged us with was this thing called an eraser test.
Oh, I love the eraser test.
And can you speak a little bit about that? Because I feel like if people hear this, it's something that they can do today and really change how they see the world.
So the eraser test is probably the biggest experiment I've done in my entire career. So when I left Google after Solve for Happy, 2 years after Solve for Happy, but before that I started to teach Solve for Happy in workshops, and I taught probably more than 20,000 people over the times that I taught. And every time I'd run a test that I call the eraser test, and it's very straightforward. Maybe our audience can do it with me. I first ask them to write down an event in their past that made them feel pain or unhappiness. Right? Choose a bad one if you can, as worse as you can find. Right? Write it down, look at it, make yourself miserable. Right? Then I tell them about a thought experiment. At the time, I was still at Google X, so people actually believed it when I was writing that. I said, look, we found a technology that could pinpoint that event in your past, okay, and erase it. But not erase it from your memory, erase it from space-time. So basically, that event disappears, okay, and everything that happened as a result disappears, right? Would you erase that event? And I ask people to raise their hands. 99% would say yes, right? And I say, okay, please keep your hand up if, disclaimer here about the technology, if that means that if you still erase it, if it also erased every friend you made as a result, every learning you learned as a result, every bit of resilience you gained as a result, every bit of knowledge you gained, and so on and so forth. And almost 98% of people would put their hands down. Right? And they put their hands down for one simple reason, that I always say it this way: it feels horrible then, but it feels amazing now. Okay? Most of the difficult times of your life feel horrible then, okay, when you're going through it. But then now that it's behind you, you go like, man, I'm so happy I went through this. Okay, I'm so happy I managed it. I'm so happy I mastered it, and so on. Having said that, there are still people, and 2% of 20,000 is not a small percentage, that will say, no, of course I take that asshole out of my life. Right? And yes, absolutely, I give them every right for that. And I myself struggled with that for a very long time. If I would erase Ali's death. Right? And I have to say, it took me a very long time to put my head around that. It took me a very long time now, 10 years later, where I have tens of millions of people, really, tens of thousands of them getting in touch, saying, look, your work has changed my life. Right? And I have to say, what happened is around 2019, I sat down and I did a thought experiment in my own head. Now, 2019 was around 5 years after Ali left. And I said, and I said to myself, if I had asked Ali before he went into the operating room, Habibi, you have one of two choices. One is to do this in 5 minutes and come out, and the other is to leave us, and then 50 million people will be happy as a result, right? Which one would you choose? And I would absolutely guarantee you Ali would have chosen the latter, okay? And so in a very 100%, I mean, I would ask you, imagine if your life had affected 50 million people, right? And, if anyone who's driven by a purpose or by empathy to humanity would say, yeah, I mean, especially if you're like me and you believe that death is not the end. Now, what I'm trying to say here is this. It's quite interesting that when we look back at the toughest events in our lives, and we look at ourselves now, we see how they defined us, mostly positively, okay? And yet, when we're going through tough events now, we hate of them, right? Why are they any different? And really, this to me is a huge learning, okay? Because any event multiplied by a lot of time eventually ends up being positive, okay? So we might as well, almost like a real video gamer. Again, I use a lot of video game analogies, but one of the most interesting video game analogies is it's the tough games that make you a better gamer, right? It's the games where you get really bashed badly, that you hate yourself while you're playing them, but then 6 months later, you're such a better gamer, okay? That basically you go like, oh, that's because of level 1 Halo 4 or whatever. Okay, and suddenly it just makes sense that skill you needed to go through that harshness to learn, right? And so I always say, of course, feel all the emotions in the world, that there are things in your life that you might want to remove, but if you choose that you might not want to erase, but if you choose not to erase them, then perhaps consider that you haven't healed yet, you haven't seen the benefit yet, and maybe that in itself is an invitation to double down on them and ask yourself, why am I still feeling hurt about something that happened so long ago? Okay, and I'm sharing too many stories, but one of those workshops, I had a lady walk up to me after the first break, where I discussed that idea that happiness is a choice, because perception of events is a choice, and realistic expectations is a choice, so happiness is a choice. And she walks to me very slowly and she says, how can you say that? How can you say happiness is a choice? You have no idea what happened to me. And then she paused for a second and said, when I was 16, right? She was 71 at the time, right? And so I literally teared up and I hugged her, and you could see how the years have literally battered her. Okay, not the age, the years. And I hugged her, and so she cried immediately. Like I think nobody maybe have reacted that way before. And I said, did it work? And she said, what? And I said, did all those years of thinking about that event work? Did they erase it? Did they remove it? Did they make you feel better? Did they make you feel happier? Did they fix it? And quite interestingly, I tell that to a lot of people, that when we, go like, oh, our life is unfair, I'm very unhappy, this is everything's wrong, and you hold on to it, okay? And I always say, like, if your partner said something awful on Friday, and you woke up on Saturday morning and you dwelled on it, and then Sunday you added a bit of drama to it, and Tuesday you said to yourself that you're going to live the rest of your life alone, does that suddenly, make her wake up and go like, oh my God, I said something awful on Friday, I have to go and apologize to him? It doesn't, right? All of the unhappiness in the world has really zero material impact on your real life. And yet we choose to stay stuck, okay? And it's quite interesting. Some of us get stuck for 55, 65 years, right? And you have to imagine that it's just a question of, I went through the tough time, I'm no longer going through the tough time. Can I flip my mindset?
Yeah. It kind of makes me think of, you're basically setting it up for the expectation that difficult things are a part of life. And if you set that when you set that expectation, when the difficult things do arise, you're not taken by surprise that this thing happened to you and it only happens to you because you expect that it happens to everyone. And I think I experienced that firsthand. And in 2015, I was assaulted and I was sucker punched in the face and I had my jaw wired shut for 3 months. And
Oh, I'm
I
so sorry.
remember it's okay because like you said, it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. And it's like you're saying, right? I remember the moment I was sitting in the hospital with my mouth wired shut, and the thoughts that kept popping up is like, why did this happen to me? Why did he hit me? All these why me questions. And then it was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was like, I remember a quote, and it says, I allow no man to belittle me by allowing me to hate him. And that kind of it shattered my whole perception of trying to put this blame on him. And I realized, okay, this happened to me. How am I going to make the best of it? That was the question I asked myself. And it completely changed everything that I started thinking about because now I had 3 months not to, you know, sit there and be sad about my situation, but 3 months off of work where I was getting paid to think about my life deeply, about what am I really passionate about doing? I don't like the job I'm going into. How can I like start exploring more of my curiosity? So now I was getting paid for 3 months to be home and read all these books that I wanted to read, right? And it basically changed the entire trajectory of my life. I found meditation, and now part of our moonshot is to get 1 billion people to start meditating. And none of that would have happened if
That's
I wasn't
incredible.
in that situation. So I resonate so much with what you're saying.
I mean, come on, listen to what you just said. I sat for 3 months with my jaw wire shut, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Did you hear that statement? And that's absolute. I mean, honestly, I don't know if you would believe me in this. So I go on a 40 days silent retreat every year, right? Unfortunately, I failed this year, which is really scaring me because it's my anchor for every year. But anyway, I go there because that silence is what every one of us needs to do exactly what you said, to reflect on our lives, to understand deeply where our empathies lie, where our insecurities lie, where our improvements lie, even our process improvements need to be, and so on. You were chosen, and it's very symbolic, Nick, I'll tell you that very openly, to stay silent for 3 months. Think about that. Life wants to prepare you for something. Life wants to tell you, hey, I don't think you're going to do this on your own, so I'm going to wire shut you for 3 months so that you actually go through that thinking. It's such a profound symbolic gesture from life. Okay, and in a very interesting way, it seems to me that you're being prepared for something that makes a huge difference. Okay, because the bigger the suffering, the bigger the learning, the bigger the reward, the bigger the improvements within us. Okay, and when the suffering is in silence, believe it or not, silence is one of the most difficult. There are African tribes that have no death penalty, but their criminals are sentenced to silence, not by themselves, but by others. So the rest of the tribe would never talk to them again. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, most of the time they take their own life. Silence is a very powerful tool.
Wow.
So think about that. What are you being prepared for?
That time where he had his mouth wired shut, I joke with him. I say it was the best 3 months of my life because before that he never shut the hell up. But at the time, for those 3 months, he had to communicate with me through Post-it notes, and we were both commuting into jobs prior to that we didn't like, and that was the impetus between us starting to communicate with each other and say that we were both meant for more. And that was when we quit our 9-to-5 jobs and started our journey of entrepreneurship together. So I think you're right that it was preparing him for, and us together. Like I was a part of that story with him.
And perhaps that makes me want you to double down on what you do for a very long time. These are, things that come with divine intervention are things that need to be paid attention to.
We have one final question for you. If someone listening right now heard all of these wisdom nuggets and still feels stuck, unhappy, or maybe even completely hopeless, what is the one thing you would like them to do once this episode ends?
Can't say one thing. That's too limiting because humanity is very different. Allow me to say three. I'd say the first is gratitude. Okay, and gratitude is not a very complex exercise. Gratitude is an exercise of looking down, not looking up. Okay, let me explain that. If you look up and compare to people who have had more than you in life, you're gonna find quite a few to upset you. Okay, if you look down and see those who are less privileged than you are, you'll find countless people. Okay, from people who are starving to death, to people who are imprisoned, to people who are in a war zone, to people who are going through, chronic disease. Or so gratitude is very easy. Okay, if you allow yourself to look down. I force my Becky to because reality is in my mind is that life is 99% good. Believe it or not. Even, of course, unless you're going through a very tough, as I said, some of those examples, for most of us, when we catch the flu, this is not the norm. This is the anomaly. That most of the time you're healthy and then you get sick. Most of the time you're walking on solid ground, and then some of us sometimes experience an earthquake, right? It's the norm of life is ease. Okay, ease of our fact of living, maybe not our mind frame and mindset, which allows us to suffer. But if that's the case, then when my brain tells me something negative about anything, I say, okay, Becky, I heard you. Go find me 9 good things about it. Okay? Fair, right? Fair, because if 90% of life is okay, then Becky's trained to find the 10%, then I might as well tell Becky to find me the 90%. And believe it or not, that really makes a difference. So I'd walk into a place today. I was visiting a friend of mine in her office, and I don't like really corporate spaces. But and my Becky was like, "Oh man, I hate to be in the corporate space." And I said, "Oh, but what do we like about this? The people were nice. The drink that they offered me was delicious. My friend was an amazing person, and you can find them." Right? So this is one. The second is, I have to say, the pandemic of our time is loneliness. And there is nothing that brings happiness more than a hug. Okay? And I know it's difficult for me to be sitting here, even when you and I guys are across a video conference. But the truth is, I encourage people more and more to put their phones down and go out and walk the streets. Okay? Sit in a cafe and text a friend and say, come have a coffee with me. Okay, if you don't have a friend nearby, talk to the barista. Respect her, acknowledge her, make her feel like a human. Thank her for the coffee. When you're leaving, put your coffee cup back and say, that was amazing. Thank you so much for making me such a wonderful coffee. And connect to humans. I believe it or not, it will make a massive difference. And you may think of me as this successful person, public figure who is known by, many people. Believe it or not, when I put myself in a room to write day after day after day, I feel the loneliest I have ever felt. Okay. And so one part of my practices is that every other day I will take myself out and I will sit in a cafe and write in the cafe. And yes, I will get interrupted at least 20 times, but that's fine. Those interruptions are wonderful. It's a lovely handshake. It's a lovely hug. Beautiful. Okay. The third and the most important is not the most important. I think gratitude is the most important. They are in that order. Gratitude followed by human connection. And the third is find yourself a purpose. Okay. And purpose is not, I'm now, one of the things I'm working on now, something called Emma, is hopefully going to change the world. It's like literally in my mind, going to solve one of the biggest problems in the world while it teaches AI one of the most important values that humanity is supposed to learn. And, and I think that's purpose, but it doesn't have to be that way. Purpose could be as simple as, I'm going to be kind to everyone I meet. That's my purpose in life. Okay. Or I'm going to smile every time someone looks at me. Or I'm going to do very well at my work while I don't really try to piss people off or whatever. And if you give yourself a mini purpose, a micro purpose, and wake up every morning and just try to make that micro purpose work, it really, really, really makes life worth living. Okay, your purpose shouldn't be defined in dollar signs. It should be defined in impact on people around you and on yourself and on people that you love and on your community. And if you find that tiny purpose, I think it will take you a very long way.
That's beautiful. I want to bring Ali back into this conversation real quick because I heard you tell a story that related to the first thing you brought up about the thoughts popping up in your head. And you told a story about when Ali died for, I don't know, several months or years. The first thought that popped in your head was Ali died. And then you had this breakthrough moment when you were able to analyze that thought and you said, yes, Ali did die, but Ali lived. And I just thought that was so powerful because when that thought popped up that Ali died, you said you would go to the place of him in the hospital. But then when you also reminded yourself that Ali lived, you thought about all the beautiful moments of his life. And I just thought that that was so powerful and such a powerful way for us to bring him back up because Ali lived and Ali still lives with us. And I want you to know that. And he's with us and he is still making his impact right now. And he is everywhere and in all of us. And we just want to say thank you for sharing him with us. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with the world. We appreciate you, man.
You're wonderful. That's the best way ever to close, honestly. There's nothing I wish for more. And I can guarantee you, if you had met him, you would have loved him. So might as well love him without meeting him. Thank you guys so much.
We do. Thank you, man.
And we love you, man. Thank you for everything.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end.
If you like this episode of the podcast, you'll probably also like this one right here. So give it a click.
Love ya.
Peace.